taxpayers $23 million a year. It was claimed some prison officers were taking excessive sick leave so that their colleagues could claim additional overtime payments. Have prison officers brought change like this upon themselves because of the fact that by rorting work practices, the government has said, right, well, we'll bring in private operators?
I think firstly we need to look at the fact that there's been no rorting. The inmate numbers over the last 10 years have gone up 60%. The staffing levels don't reflect that, and a common trend every time that the inmate numbers spike throughout the system is posts are created on a supposedly temporary basis, and how they're funded is on overtime.
This week, the Corrective Services Commissioner, Ron Woodham, wrote this letter to staff at Cessnock, making it clear that privatisation will go ahead by the middle of this year. He also writes that no staff member need lose their job.
I repeat, your options are move to another location within the department, apply for a position with the successful contractor with salary maintenance for 12 months. Note, if you elect this option, you will be required to resign from the department and you will be paid out any recreation and long service leave entitlements. Apply for voluntary redundancy.
An upper house inquiry will begin hearing submissions on Monday, with Commissioner Woodham expected to be first out of the blocks. And while John Robertson has declined his invitation to appear, he did agree to speak to Stateline today. John Robertson, last October you told Stateline that voters could rest assured that you weren't about to become an advocate of privatisation. But just a few months on, and here you are arguing in favour of the privatisation of prisons. Your critics are going to say it didn't take long for you to sell out.
Well, what we're doing is implementing a whole set of reforms in corrective services, and a small component of that is private sector involvement in Parkland Cessnock. But the way forward reforms are much more than that. They're about dealing with a budget blowout in overtime, they're about changing work practices, and they're really about making sure we're getting value for money for taxpayers in New South Wales, which is what people rightly expect of government.
So explain to me why power privatisation was a government policy that had to be stopped at all costs when you were Union's New South Wales boss. But now prisons privatisation gets your seal of approval.
Well, private sector involvement at 2 jails is significantly different from electricity. Electricity was about the delivery of energy to every household and every business in New South Wales. We're talking about private sector involvement at Cessnock and at Parklea. There will still be 29 jails that are operated by government. What we're doing is making sure we're getting value for money here, and there are no parallels between what we're doing here and electricity.
Well, the state opposition has confirmed to Stateline that it opposes the privatisation of prisons housing maximum security inmates, and that includes Parklea and Cessnock. So where does that leave you, John Robertson? Further to the right than the coalition?
Well, it's not an ideological argument. What we're doing here is we're running an argument about how we get maximum efficiency, what we can do about benchmarking our jails against privately operated jails. I mean, in 1993, Junee was put in place under the coalition government. It's a jail that's worked effectively, efficiently, as I said earlier, meets all the performance targets, the key performance areas. It's equal to or better than the government-run jails. I mean, frankly, I'm amazed that the coalition would be in this situation.
But John Robertson, you were the man known as Mr Anti-Privatisation. You came to the Reece government saying you wanted to help it win back Labor's heartland. But doesn't this issue show voters at the end of the day that pragmatism wins out over principle?
Well, what we're saying is that there's 2 operations here that we can get private sector involvement for a period of time under these contracts, and we're going to maintain the remainder of the jails in government ownership. There is no plan for this, but it's about us having a capacity to benchmark. We can't have a corrective services system that doesn't move forward, that's not out there maximising the value for the money that taxpayers are putting into this system. We've got a responsibility, and we've been doing that in the prison system ever since, certainly that I'm aware, Commissioner Woodham's been involved. We've been driving down escape rates, we've been introducing new programs, we've been trying to introduce additional reforms, and we will keep doing that.
John Robertson, while cost-cutting is obviously the order of the day in the state's prisons, this week we learned that you wanted to spend $500,000 on a flash new office for yourself. That's not exactly a good look in these times of financial austerity, is it?
Well, there will be no $500,000 office fit out, I can assure everybody of that. When I arrived on level 35, which was the area that I was given, the plans that were there had already been approved, and they were there. The first that I or my office heard about a $500,000 figure was when we were contacted by the papers and they told us $500,000. Frankly, I was outraged, and just as everyone else was, about that sort of figure. I'm not into the size of the office and how flash it is. I started my working life on building sites as an electrician. I've worked out of the boot of a car. I don't want, and I will not have, a $500,000 office fit out. It is absurd and obscene, and all the comments I've heard people on Talkback Radio making are justified. It is a disgrace, and it won't be happening.
Minister, thanks for talking to Stateline.
Thanks, Nick.
Inadequate hazard reduction, the lethal crime of arson. Both are considered factors in the catastrophic Victorian bushfires of Saturday, February the 7th, in which 208 people, probably more, were burnt to death. But tonight the Climate Institute, pulling together all the scientific research, is declaring that the bushfires of Victoria were the fires of climate change. The Institute's research and updated conclusions will be submitted to the Royal Commission into the Victorian